Hey guys, welcome to another Escape from Tarkov video. A lot of you have been asking me about the different settings I use in game, how to get the highest FPS, how I make my game look good, etc, etc. So I decided to do a video where I go through all the settings and I explain to you why I use them and why you should as well. So starting in the game tab, the first thing you want to click and have enabled is auto RAM cleaner. Tarkov do unfortunately have memory leaks, so the auto RAM cleaner would basically help you prevent too big memory leaks and will also help you up the performance. There's also the possibility to use third-party programs, but that's really up to you. I use one because I'm streaming. I'll be sure to link you one in the description below, but for you, I'd say the auto RAM cleaner is good enough. You also want to keep the use of physical cores checked because Tarkov is a very CPU heavy game. So to get the best affinity from the cores itself on your CPU, I really recommend having this one checked. Moving over to the FOV, this is a highly individual thing. What FOV really is the extent of the observable game world that you can see on your display at any given moment. So what this means is that the higher the FOV, the more you can see around you. So if I put my FOV down to 50, I'd see less of the game world. If I put it at 75, I see more. This is why I keep it at 75, because I want to see as much as possible. Yeah, you can keep your head bobbing at 0.2 if you really want to be immersed and also get really dizzy. You can put it up to 1. Moving over to the graphics settings, I do run my game on full screen, but for the sake of the video, I put it on borderless. Performance-wise, I have the best FPS with full screen, but that's also because I'm streaming. Other people say they have better performance with borderless or windowed, but I don't really feel that. But if you have better FPS with borderless, go ahead. I do run my game in 1920 because I don't have, or 1080, because I don't have a 1440 monitor. I know there's a lot of issues with 1440 in general in Tarkov, so if you need to look for a workaround, I do not even know if there is one that's out yet. Moving over to texture and shadows quality, we live in a day and age where performance often is better on higher qualities than on lower. But these are the settings I've had the most success with FPS wise, but you have to keep in mind I also stream with these settings, and I put a lot of strain on my graphics card by using the NVENC encoder from NVIDIA. You might have more success on putting the qualities on high instead. Object LOD quality, keep it at 2. Overall visibility, I recommend you should have it on 2000 if your rig can handle it, because we're getting bigger maps, and being able to see players is better on 2K. I don't feel like there is a big difference between 3 and 2, but you have to play around with those settings a bit yourself. I keep mine at 1 for the best performance, and I also keep my shadow visibility at 40 for the best way to see players. Basically what shadow visibility does is it makes the game darker. I keep it as low as possible to be able to spot players easier. Anti-aliasing, there's also different schools of thought on what's the best. I think the TAA is best. Other people get better performance with TAA high. So play around with that and yeah, just see what works the best for you. Resampling, keep it at 1x off on HBAO, SSR off, anisotropic filtering off. The next one I want to talk about is sharpness. It's default at 1. I feel like the game looks better at 1.1 instead. Play around with that as well if you want the game to look better. Lobby FPS and game FPS I keep at max. I keep all my options below here off. Some people like to play with noise for the effect you get when you take painkillers, for example. I don't really care about it. But if you want a real good immersion, you can play around with these ones as well, but you don't really need them. Moving over to sound, there is only one thing that we really need to address, and it's the option of the interface volume. So what the interface volume does is it makes sound when you're packing mags and looting items. If you want the best experience, I'd say keep it at 100 because it's part of the game and the immersion is better. I keep it at 10. You can also turn it all the way off if you don't want to hear it, but I keep it at 10 because I want some immersion. But what this does is that you can hear players and your surroundings better in general by keeping this low or off. So I recommend keeping it as low as possible if you want to hear players better. The last thing I want to talk about in the game settings is the controls. There's only two things I want to address because I keep everything at default. Some people like to, for example, change the toggle for the breath, for running, but I just got used to the default keys, so I still play around with the default settings. But there is an option here where you can find the key to discard item. This is extremely helpful when you have to loot fast or you want to discard items from your inventory fast and just be more efficient in general. I keep mine at mouse button 3, which is basically one extra button I have for my thumb on the left side of the mouse. This way I can discard items really fast. So try to find the key that you're comfortable using, try to get used to it, and change it. You can also see up at the right corner of the screen I have an FPS counter, and the way you can access that is by accessing the console right down here. I keep this on a Norwegian key that you definitely do not have on your keyboard, so find console key that you're comfortable with using, press it, you can write FPS 1 to get the counter I have now, FPS 2 for more detailed settings. If you want to turn it all the way off, you write FPS 0. Moving over to my NVIDIA settings. So after 0.12 came about, they banned reshade for being used with the game. It's 100% understandable why they did it, because reshade had some options that were very, very unfair for other players. So yeah, it was overall good for the game that they removed it. The game sadly still does not have options for you to change gamma settings, so if you have a really dark monitor, you're gonna have a hard time, especially in darker places, for example in Ollie on interchange. So if you have access to the NVIDIA game filter, I really recommend it. So I'll show you the difference between when I have it on and when it's off. So this is what the game looks like when it's off for me, which is very, very dark. And this is what it looks like when it's on. I also have some options in the game filter that I use because of streaming to make the game look good when it comes to coloring, details and sharpness, so you can play around with those settings a little bit. But what's important in the game filters is that you keep them in this order because every setting affects the other one. So this one is the brightness contrast is the highest priority one for me. If we go into the different ones, there is not much that I have changed. I put up the contrast a little bit, turned the shadows all the way down, and the gamma a little bit up. The shadows is back to I want to be able to see players quickly, and shadows, in my opinion, is polluting the image a bit. Details, sharpen at 0, clarity at 52, HDR toning at 72. This is also mostly because I want the game to look good for you guys on stream. Moving over to coloring, not much I've changed. Basically the vibrance I put at 14.6. You can change the temperature a bit, but yeah, you can see what it does. It's not really something you want to play around too much with. The last one I want to talk about is sharpen. A lot of people ask me how I make my game look so sharp, and this is the setting I use. So I put the ignore film gain at 9%. Basically, it makes the clarity of the picture a bit better. The same does sharpen do. You can also play around with the sharpen settings in the game, but I've had more success using the NVIDIA game filters. So until we get an option to play around with these settings in the game, this is what I recommend using. Some of these are obviously for the looks of it, but some of them also help you if you have a monitor that is really dark and you really struggle with dark places in the game. So yeah, guys, these are basically the settings I run for the game graphics wise. I hope you got something out of it, and if you have any more questions that you want to talk about, I do stream on Twitch every single day where I play Tarkov. I do a very educative stream, and I also try to have fun. We meme around a bit. Yeah, and this is what I have to offer in terms of game settings. Alright guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button. I will keep uploading consistently every week to this channel with guides, with more things like settings you can play around with, and highlights. So yeah, I'll see you guys around. Thanks for watching.